Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farrukh Pitafi. Once again, we are going to talk about the situation in Afghanistan and what exactly is in store for the people of Afghanistan. At this moment, it is clear that Afghan Taliban are present in Kabul, on the streets of Kabul, although they have taken over the Afghan presidential palace. We haven't seen any statement coming from them declaring themselves as the government. And on the other side, there is a unfolding humanitarian crisis going on the airport. 7 people have died so far, 2 of them clinging to a plane taking off and who actually fell to their deaths. That is a horrible situation. On the other side, 2 important meetings. One, Pakistan's NSC, National Security Committee of the Cabinet, met today, and there was a very clear emphasis on the need to create an inclusive government in Kabul. On the other side, we also just saw the UNSC meeting and Pakistan's permanent representative's reaction after that as well. During that meeting, the Secretary General of the United Nations actually pointed out that it is important, and at this moment he also pointed out that the UN operations have not been targeted by Taliban. So something seems to be holding Taliban back, and that actually gives you the hope that all-inclusive government creation might be possible. So we are going to talk about that as well, because there seems to be one discrepancy, and that is a serious one. The Doha office is very clear in talking about how to actually engage with the other political parties. But on the other side, when you talk about the people on the ground, the Taliban soldiers, they seem to be very young men, and it seems that they might be very, aggressive at times. But at this moment, this is the situation that I described. I'm going to actually introduce the guest today, but before that, our team has prepared a report for you. Kindly watch that.
Kabul has fallen. Ashraf Ghani is seeking asylum in Tajikistan, and Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar is now the interim president of Afghanistan. The city has descended into chaos, and residents and foreign nationals have been trying to escape. Kabul was the last major city in Afghanistan to hold out against the Taliban offensive, which began months ago but has accelerated in the space of days as they rapidly gained control of territories, shocking many observers. The Taliban ordered their fighters to enter Kabul on Sunday after earlier holding them back at outskirts of the city. They said they were going in to prevent chaos and looting after security forces left parts of the capital. Sohail Shaheen, a member of the Taliban's negotiating team in Doha, said while talking to the media that people in Kabul had no need to worry and that their properties and lives were safe. However, there were scattered reports of fighting in and around the cities, especially at the Kabul airport and the Karabakh district. Few days ago, Prime Minister Imran Khan spoke to Turkey's President Erdogan, with the 2 leaders reviewing the rapidly evolving situation in Afghanistan. The Prime Minister had told Erdogan that the National Security Committee would meet to further deliberate over the evolving situation. The 2 leaders would consult again after the meeting with a view to coordinate their efforts. The Prime Minister reaffirmed Pakistan's resolve to continue all efforts in support of an inclusive political solution in Afghanistan.
Right. Now let me introduce the guest I've got in the studio with me on the panel. First of all, it is Khalid Taimur Akram Saab, who is Executive Director for Center for Global and Strategic Studies, Islamabad. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Next to him is Senator Anwarul Haq Kakar, who is Senator of Balochistan Awami Party. He hails from a province that is adjacent to and contiguous to Afghanistan, but also his party is a coalition a member of the ruling coalition at the center, and he's a great resource. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Next to him is a man, if I start actually introducing him in detail, so it will take 5-10 minutes, I think, because he has three PhDs. He also has Bharat law and has been a politician, but he also is a great resource on Afghanistan. Barrister Muhammad Ali Saab also joins us in the studio. He's a senior analyst. Thank you very much, sir. Today you are actually donning your analyst hat, right? So we are going to actually discuss it in a bit, but first of all I have to read these three important cards for you. Let us see what the cards say. Pakistan remains committed to an inclusive political settlement as the way forward, representing all Afghan ethnic groups. National Security Committee has actually stated it. Then there is another statement. It is now time for the international community to work together to ensure an inclusive political settlement for long-term peace, security and development of Afghanistan, the region, NSC. All parties in Afghanistan need to respect the rule of law, to protect fundamental human rights of all Afghans, and ensure that Afghan soil is not used by any terrorist group against any country. NSC again. So these were the three very important statements that I have to read to you. With your permission, Khalid Saab, I have to start with the Barrister Saab, if you don't mind. Barrister Saab, it is clear that Kabul has fallen. Now what comes next?
Well, I believe after the fall of Kabul, in inverted commas, I mean, it has been captured, and hopefully things will settle down soon, maybe in a day or two, and a clear picture will emerge insofar as the political dispensation of Afghanistan is concerned, as to who will govern and what will be the governing mechanism in place. But I believe that Afghans have a long, arduous process and journey which they are facing right now, because they have to now embark upon the process of nation building and state building. The state structures have almost collapsed. Our nation is in a chaos, and I believe that both these are cumbersome tasks. It will take time, but I am hopeful that with the resilience of Afghan nation as such, and the commitment that they have, I believe, and the mistakes that they have learned from their past, I believe that now they are well equipped and more experienced to handle their future. Inshallah, Pakistan as a neighboring country, we have a responsibility, and we have a moral as well as a political obligation to see Afghanistan stable and peaceful and prosperous, because that will in a way add to the prosperity and peace of this region as well, in which we are situated. So I believe that Pakistan is also having its door open for all the efforts and initiatives that Pakistan can undertake to promote peace in Afghanistan, like the recent visit of Afghan delegation,
non-Pashtun senior leaders who arrived yesterday. They are still,
and many more efforts that Pakistan has done in the past.
Right, and we are going to talk about that as well. Let me bring in Senator Kakar. Senator Kakar, your take on the future of Afghanistan.
Well, as we see the emerging developments across the border in Afghanistan, the first thing which strikes my mind is that the current regime of the political dispensation, which forcefully, relatively in a bloodless situation, has taken the control of the territory. But now they have to morph from a rogue militia who has resisted an occupant force, how they would be able to administer statecraft, how they would be able to manage the governance, the challenges of the governance. And that to me appears to be a larger challenge, a bigger challenge. Whether this group or people associated with these groups, are they prepared? Are they ready to take on this challenge? How do they cater for the peace and security of the common Afghan, as we shouldn't forget that these are the people who has faced enormous problems for last 4 decades. Even the word problem wouldn't describe their miseries, the kind of tragedies they have gone through, the common Afghan. And how they would be able to connect themselves, which my honorable colleague Saf was referring to, the mechanism of the government, how they would connect with the regional powers, with the global power.
Right.
Would they be able to appear and function as a normal country? That needs to be seen, and that appears to be the biggest challenge.
Right, and as we move forward in the program, we are going to assess that as well. But let me repeat the same question. Khalid Taimur sir, you want to comment on this as well. Afghanistan's future, what do you see is in store? And secondly, before coming to the program, you and I were discussing the Taliban's organogram. We understand that the Doha office and representation there are quite exposed to the diplomatic norms, but the organization is headed by Mullah Habatullah, who might not be that diplomatic. So who actually is going to call shots in coming days?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I will say that we have seen in last 24 hours that the Taliban in Afghanistan, who have taken over Kabul, they are absolutely quiet. So they are quiet because of 3 reasons. One, their main leadership is either sitting in Doha or in the neighboring countries negotiating some kind of settlement. 2, these Taliban are not the same version of Taliban which was before 9/11. They are very well educated, they know the international politics, and they are in the international politics. 3, they have, yesterday I have been hearing their announcements that they have announced, they have pardoned everybody, they have said the girls can go to school, and they are issuing very diplomatic statements which were not there before.
They, as in Doha office?
Yes, they are
the commanders on
not
ground.
the commanders on ground.
Yeah.
Commanders on ground are not issuing any kind of official statements. Whatever
there were reports. Clarissa Ward actually reported that children and women were stopped from going out in other parts, not in Kabul.
Not in Kabul, in other parts, yes. And most of the things which we are seeing are coming out of the social media which people are uploading over there from there. So yes, Maulvi Habatullah is their leader, and he is the former Chief Justice of the Taliban government, and since 2016 he has been calling the shots. Now we have to see that what kind of hierarchy which they are following. So it is their Amirul Mu'mineen, or their leader is Maulvi Habatullah Khunzada, and then he has 3 Naib Amirs. One is Sirajuddin Haqqani, second is Mullah Muhammad Yaqub. Mullah Muhammad Yaqub is the son of Mullah Umar, and he is basically the operational commander on ground, who has been handling the who has been coordinating between various ethnic groups in all parts of Afghanistan for the takeover of various provinces. And then we have the most important man, who is Mullah Brother. Mullah Brother he is the co-founder of Taliban, and he is the political face of Taliban. He has been negotiating in Doha and all these things. Then there's yet another important person whom they call in Urdu like Ala Judge, or who is the one they call whenever they face the Taliban Shura, or they face any issue, they go to him for the judgment. His name is Mullah Abdul Hakim, and he was the head of the, and he is still the head of the Doha team, which is negotiating with various countries.
Right.
So this all hierarchy is right now divided into various countries, and they are negotiating. Like we saw the non-Pakhtun group visiting Pakistan. Similarly, the similar kind of groups, Taliban groups, are visiting Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and all other neighboring countries, and even Russia is talking to them. So they will take another 2 to 3 days to negotiate, and till then they have told the local leaders to control various areas. Like in Kabul, yesterday we saw on TV that various police force and other institutions, they ran away and the Taliban.
There was a vacuum and looting actually started, and after that Afghan Taliban.
So generally it is thought that it will take another 3 to 4 days, and by then the policy will be clear that what Taliban would want from the international community.
Right. Barrister Saif, do you think that whatever dispensation emerges, the international community is going to acknowledge it?
Well, Pitafi Sahab, the international dispensation or political realities are basically dictated by the ground realities in politics. Taliban has effectively taken over almost all Afghanistan.
Right.
It's under their military control at the moment. And that's a de facto situation,
right,
where any government which wants to deal with Afghanistan in one way or the other has to, whether they like it or not, interact with Taliban at the moment, because I mean they are the only force on the ground. Number one. Number two, I believe that the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan is one of the biggest strategic upheavals in the region at the moment.
Right.
It has actually dismantled or actually put into disorientation all the established realities, political realities that we had in this region for the last 2 decades.
Right.
So therefore, now, exactly. So now every power in the world, all the regional as well as global powers, they will have to keep this changing scenario in mind before they make up their mind whether or not they want to recognize Afghanistan or not. But you see, in international law there are 2 types of recognitions. One is de facto and the other is de jure.
Right.
I believe that the de facto recognition has to come one way or the other, because they are in de facto.
It has already come.
But in my opinion, as Khalid Saab and my colleague Anwar both have pointed out, I believe that there is an important element that we have to consider in the futuristic perspective of Afghanistan as to what is going to evolve. If we have to analyze that, then we must consider that Taliban primarily was and still is a guerrilla resistance movement.
Right.
They emerged in 1995-96, and it is now almost 25 years old guerrilla movement.
Right.
Number one, guerrilla movement is effective militarily when they have an enemy to fight against. The enemy was there, the United States of America, now they have withdrawn. So now there is no more an enemy left as such.
Right.
Now my understanding is that they need to immediately transform themselves into a political organization,
Right.
which they are trying. And I think that their behavior in the last few months, especially since the start of Doha talks, negotiations, their interaction with the United States establishment, as well as other world powers like Iran, China, as well as Russia, and Pakistan as well. I think they have matured up politically as well, and now they are in the process of transforming from a guerrilla resistance movement into a political organization. However, it will still take time. Time in the sense, in 2 senses. I mean.
25 years or not?
No, not at all, because now they are in the driving seat.
Okay.
So once you sit in the driving seat, then your responsibilities are different than while you are trying to shape that driving seat.
And this question of legitimacy, Senator Saab, is very important, because since in 1995 Taliban took over, 96. Since then, till 2001. The UN and the world community didn't recognize Taliban's government, even though they were controlling 97-98% of Afghanistan. But there was a complication at that time. There was a legitimate de facto de jure government that was sitting in Mazar-e-Sharif. This time, the president has resigned. So now what happens?
Well, there is a void. There is a legal void, there is a constitutional void, and there is a void of political norm. It's a challenge not just for the region, it's a global challenge as well. I mean, I recall Prime Minister of Britain was talking yesterday, and he was trying to elaborate that this is a difficult situation.
He also appealed to others not to recognize Taliban's government.
Yes, he did say, but he impliedly said that whatever needs to be done, we should do it collectively. There shouldn't be a bilateral recognition or relationship with that, as far as I could have understood the statement.
Right. Senator Saab, sorry to cut you, Federal Minister for Information joins us on telephone. Fawad Chaudhry Saab has joined us. Fawad Chaudhry Saab, thank you very much, sir, for your precious time. Let me ask you, what happens next and how Pakistan is going to facilitate the peace process or the political process in Afghanistan? And there seems to be an unfolding humanitarian crisis at Kabul airport. What happens to that, sir? Can Pakistan play a role?
Well, obviously, Pakistan is probably the most important regional player as far as the Afghanistan issue is concerned, and without Pakistan's role, really things cannot really settle down. So today we held our Prime Minister chaired this Pakistan National Security Council meeting, and the statement you must have read by now clearly spells out what really we are looking for. We are looking for an inclusive government in Afghanistan in partnership with the Committee to Work, and we are working right now with all stakeholders. It includes the regional players, it includes international players, as well as the different groups within Afghanistan. So we're working with, with Taliban. We're working with former Northern Alliance people, different ethnic groups. We're trying to bring them together so they can form an inclusive government in Afghanistan, and that's the only way. We actually tried to convince Mr. Ashraf Ghani that he will not be able to rule Afghanistan exclusively, and he has to give share to other ethnic groups, other communities, which he failed to do. And right now, and obviously the Pakhtuns were major. You can imagine that Pakhtuns constitute about 48% or maybe 52% of Afghan population, but in the Ghani regime, they were holding only 9% of Afghan government. So you can imagine the disparity in Afghanistan. So now our effort is that we are trying to convince, the Afghan Taliban and other groups that they cannot rule exclusively. So they have to have ethnic representation. So this is how a democracy works. This is how a modern government work. And we would like Afghanistan to be a forward-looking government. We would like them to, respect human rights. We'd like them to respect internationally recognized fundamental rights. This is how we look at Afghanistan.
Right, and regarding the humanitarian situation, the UNGA actually, the Secretary General spoke earlier, and he called on all countries to actually stand united and help Afghanistan's people. We are seeing that there might be panic or fear at Kabul airport, elsewhere as well. So can Pakistan play a role here, sir?
Well, we are trying. We are, our right now, our embassy is open. We have helped journalists to come out, media people, and today I received a call from president of Committee to Protect Journalists, and he thanked Pakistan for its role. We are also playing role to evacuate international people affiliated with international organizations. Even, the Afghans were willing to leave the country. So we are open and we are working. All consulates are working right now.
Right. Fawad Chaudhry sir, one very important aspect that one has to actually ask you, and that is, how are you reading the situation in Afghanistan? Were you, especially the government of Pakistan, expecting that the Kabul government will unfold this quickly?
Well, till today, I would say the light in the end of the tunnel is that there is no violence, there is no bloodshed, and transition is apparently very smooth. So this is, I think, one major, I would say, something that we can really show some satisfaction over, that there is no violence and that there is no kind of bloodshed that many were expecting in Afghanistan. And till today, there is no exodus of people also, and there is no migration towards Pakistan. but situation is evolving. It's tricky, so we cannot predict about tomorrow. But let's hope we are trying.
Right. I was asking about Ashraf Ghani's government. There was assessment internationally that the government might fall, but did you see that it might fall so soon? Within 9 days, Afghan Taliban took over the entire country very swiftly, sir, and the security forces disappeared.
Yeah, because I think Mr. Ghani literally failed to provide any leadership. So he literally ran away. So you can see that even his own ministers and cabinet has now criticized him. So when there was a vacuum, the leader himself literally ran away. So what there has to be, the transition, and I don't think so. Afghan forces have even bothered to fight. There is no fight, literally no fight, and this is fairly bloodless event.
Right. Last question before I let you go, Fawad Chaudhry Sahab, and that is that has more to do with hypotheticals that are being actually discussed on international media. I understand that Pakistan supports an inclusive government and a process that builds a government, but one hypothetical is that it might fail, and in the end, Afghan Taliban take over Kabul. So the international community is asking whether Pakistan will recognize the next government, whatever it is, in Afghanistan, or there will be caveats.
Well, we are working with international community. We don't think so. There will be any, this has to be unilateral decision. This has to be, a decision in kind of cooperation with the rest of the regional powers. And Prime Minister Imran Khan spoke to President Erdogan yesterday, and we are working with other regional players. We believe that Pakistan, Iran, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and China has a role to play. And we hope that, with these powers, we will decide, we will have kind of a joint stretch.
Right. Fawad Chaudhry Sahab, Federal Minister for Information, thank you very much, sir, for your precious time. Thank you very much for your input. Let me come back to the studio. Kakar Sahab had stopped you earlier. If you want to build on that point about recognition and how upon a government, whatever it is, will be treated by international community, please go on.
Yes, this is what exactly I was trying to elaborate.
Yeah.
That this time what it appears for last 48 hours particularly, and generally by the engagement of Taliban with the Doha talks and then later on Doha agreement, that there is a deep wish which appears on their side that they're looking for international recognition.
Right.
And that sort of legitimacy would enable them to go for service delivery on the part of the Afghan state, on the behest of the Afghan state for its own populace. I think so they do appreciate, then they have a realization that if they are disconnected and they remain in isolation, the kind of a struggle which they claim they have gone through for the last 2 decades would be without fruits, and it would be a fruitless sort of a tree from where there would be no beneficiary.
Right.
And on the basis of this realization, I feel that region, Pakistan can take a lead role and fill in that void by engaging European Union, United Kingdom, United States, along with the regional players, China and Russia, all, and bring a sort of a mechanism which is acceptable based on universal human rights, the protection of minorities, all the relatively political liberal value system to which they are willing, in my opinion, to come on the middle path and seek a recognition and start functioning like a normal state.
Right. Let me bring the same question to you, Khalid Sahab. If you want to add on this, please do. Legitimacy.
Yes, legitimacy is the basic requirement now for the Taliban government and for their leadership. One, this is the time when the regional powers have to play role, and I have been saying this before also, that for this purpose Shanghai Cooperation Organization can be one platform which can start playing an effective role. Presently all the countries surrounding Afghanistan are part of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, may it be China, may it be Tajikistan, Uzbekistan,
With the exception of Iran.
no, Iran is also a dialogue partner.
Well, dialogue partner, but
Yeah,
not
but
another.
not the main.
Yeah.
And Afghanistan is also a dialogue partner of
Yeah.
the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We are going to see that in next couple of days, Taliban will be negotiating more with the regional countries rather than the European Union and the Americans, because the response of the European Union is quite cold towards them. So they are now in the position of strength. So they would expect the world powers to respect them, and I would go with what our colleague Barrister Saif has said, that for the legitimacy they have to act like a political party, and they have to be more of politician rather than being freedom fighters or fighter against any kind of force.
Guerrilla fighters.
Guerrilla
Yeah.
fighters.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, they will be they have to talk to United Nations also, and this is the time maybe the United Nations Security Council or the United Nations General Assembly should invite a delegation of Taliban, and instead of Doha, I think the talk should now shift to a broader platform where they should prove that why they should be given legitimacy.
Kabul?
Yeah, Kabul maybe. And also there's one other thing, I think on that, Mr. Saif, since he's a lawyer, he can put more light on it. What I have read in the United Nations Charter, which was very initially written in late 40s, it is written that any group or any party controlling the major part of the country, United Nations has to accept that as the legitimate rulers of that area. Probably that was written in late 40s once the countries were evolving. But
in 1945,
yeah,
when
so,
it was
so in between 1945 and 1950, their constitution was made, or so that thing is still there. So as per going the UN norms, United Nations may have to accept them as a legitimate power in Afghanistan in times to come.
Right. That is Saif, one aspect which is really really bothering for a father of two girls like me, is how the Afghan women will be treated in coming days. We know that there are promises which have been made that they will be allowed with hijab to go to their workplaces and education. But what is happening so far on ground, I don't know whether it is because the Doha Council has not been able to shift to Kabul so far, or it is because of something else. Everyone seems to be panicked about it and worried. How important are women's rights, and who should be actually speaking for that right now?
Well, I believe rights of women and rather human rights in general are the responsibility and kind of a duty of the collective burden, collective conscience of humankind.
Right.
I mean,
UN.
Yes. UN as well as humanity in general. I mean, atrocities or violation of human rights anywhere is a concern for everywhere. And I believe that every conscious human being, every human being with a heart would empathize with those people who are living in a state of uncertainty at the moment, because Afghanistan is in a state of chaos right now. But I believe that, as I said earlier, that Taliban have grown, evolved and matured up over the last 20 years. They have very clearly realized that some of their practices, some of their views, which are too conservative, rather in a way obscurantist views, would not go now with their current responsibility that they hold as rulers of Afghanistan.
Right.
So I personally think that if you look at the statements coming from Taliban leadership, Mullah Baradar as well as Mullah Hakim, who is their media expert as well, spokesman, kind of a person dealing with the media control of Taliban, he has also said that, I mean, they are trying to assure women that there will be no, the repetition of the same old policies. However, I personally believe that yes, there may be some violations in some areas of Afghanistan because of the situation, because the situation is very fluid and volatile at the moment. It's still a war situation.
There's a follow-up question that I want to bring to you regarding women. We have seen that while Doha process was going on, women were talking to Taliban as well. But so far, we haven't seen any woman playing a role in any of the Taliban Shura, any of the Taliban bodies. Because of that, it is thought that maybe they will be tolerated and they will be able to work in the offices, but they won't be represented in any government. That will be.
But I mean, let's not forget the fact that there are certain ground realities that take time to evolve. Like, for example, Taliban's view of Islam, Sharia, is the typical tribal Pashtun traditionalist view. And lots of people may not agree with that stringent and strict and obscurantist approach to Islam, but this is what their approach is. And probably this is one of their galvanizing slogan, which has attracted lots of Afghan fighters to stand with them and take up arms for them. So therefore, expecting them to include women in their jihadi shuras, I think it's too far-fetched at the moment. Maybe a few years down the road, maybe the situation will change. But I don't think that we should expect this from them. However, insofar as the Islamic edicts regarding women and those people who are under your control, even in the jihadi principles of Islam and even in the general Sharia, I think if Taliban would abide by those, that would also provide a lot of space for women to operate. But insofar as the fact that whether they should wear a burqa or a hijab, I think they have made it clear that if they are wearing hijab, because I mean, that is okay, because there will be some kind of cultural changes in Afghanistan imposed by Taliban. That is, I mean, we should be prepared for that. But short of that,
the concern, and allow me to actually take it to Senator Kakar. The problem, Senator Kakar, is that there were places which were ruled by the Kabul government, Kabul government, for 20 years, and there, whatever lull or whatever relative peace was there, the population grew, and 45% of Afghanistan's population is either 15 or under 15, according to the last census. Now, those people have never known Taliban's rule. And especially when it comes to girls, they are accustomed to certain liberties, like going to school. We don't call these liberties, we believe they are rights, but they are, in their culture, it might be a liberty. And still, there's no assurance that it will continue, is there?
This morning, I've seen a couple of pictures on social media and mainstream international media also, that young girls are walking towards the school while wearing a headscarf. It's very reassuring images as far as the women and then the girls' situation is concerned in the heart of the Kabul. But the basic point which you are trying to make is there are certain decent, basic, universal human rights which needs in 21st century to be assured to any human being. Yes, in principle, I agree, or any human being would agree with that. But the issue is, what is the sustainable approach when you go back to the human history, whether the organic mechanism of any society which grows with certain value system and it owns those values and practices those values. And on the other hand, no matter how good the value system is, but if it is imposed by an outside force or idea, it at times face unwanted or desired resistance, which creates more confusion, which creates more obfuscation, which creates more radicalization. So let Afghan society have the chance to grow organically and grow organically in the right direction.
Right. And my problem is, I understand that evolution is important. In 20 years, the US could not evolve a political system, and eventually it crumbled the moment they left. But these are human beings, not NPCs, right? Not non-performing characters in a video game. They are human beings who have been accustomed to certain rights. And how do you unlearn their rights that you are given?
I mean, there would be people who would be having strong views that how human beings are treated in this region, who are living under the authority of Chinese state, or under the authority of Indian state, or under the authority of Iranian state. So how could we apply some exclusive approach to the Afghans? There are agreements and there are disagreements. What I'm trying to say over here is that Afghanistan has gone through 5 decades of a gory history, a bloody history. So let this moment be seized and peace given a chance, and all these universal human rights which are close to human soul, which are close to Islamic idea, and the ethos of Sharia too, it needs an enlightened interpretation, which I'm sure that there are enlightened scholars which are available to guide that society, to shape their legal system, to shape their moral fabric, to shape their social structure. But we need to give them an organic and peaceful chance so they can evolve and grow organically.
Very quickly, how much time?
Oh, well,
centuries? Decades?
Sometimes human beings are slow and they do take centuries, and sometimes they have leap jumpers too. So let's see how do they choose in their case.
As father of two, as I pointed out, when I think about that uncertainty on streets, there are moments when I cannot properly breathe, and that is something I'm sure every father in the world must be going through. The kind of failure one faces when one cannot give their children the kind of security they deserve. But let me, Khalid Saab, change the question for you. Day before yesterday and yesterday, Afghan Taliban actually ran over certain prisons. Out of one of those prisons, actually, one Mullah Fakir was reported to have been released. He's thought to be TTP's vice president, and he's over there at this moment. How to actually ensure that any element, any TTP element that is in Afghanistan is actually seized, handed over to Pakistan, and then the terrorist activities don't take place.
Yes, this is very important. We have seen that in last couple of days, Taliban have freed many prisoners from prisons across Afghanistan, and in that there are reports that the ISIS terrorists, Al-Qaeda terrorists and TTP terrorists who were jailed there, they are also free. So now this is the time where Pakistan should be talking to them, to arrest all those people again and hand them over to Pakistan. Two, Taliban, this is going to be a very, very serious thing in front of the international community, that Taliban, for proving their legitimacy, they have to act on this. They have to be ensuring that all the foreign fighters who are present on the Afghan soil, may it be from any part of the world, they should be held in prisons and they should not be freed. Yes,
and handed over to Pakistan.
And handed over to Pakistan if they belong to Pakistan, if they belong to any other country, they should be handed over to respective countries.
I'm told that we have to actually conclude the program, but Senator Kakar, you wanted to come in very quickly.
And there is a lot of disinformation going on right now, and we have to be very cautious.
His picture
particularly he was released last April by Ghani administration, and that release was reported by Urdu VOA, and I've got the link of that too. So we need to be cautious.
Urdu VOA opens in Pakistan. I didn't know about that.
But there is a link on Twitter I can share.
Okay, definitely. You want to actually add to this?
Yes, but yes. In addition to what he has said, I think that we must consolidate our hold and our on our borders, which I think are quite impregnable now because of the
fencing,
efforts of the
negate
Pakistan
fencing,
army and all that. Yes, the fencing. But we must also focus on the development in those areas which were earlier hit by terrorism in Pakistan, like the the former tribal areas, all those underdeveloped areas of Pakistan, where there is a possibility that the TTP or Daesh collaborators may try to, create a situation. But I personally am hopeful and positive that the law and order mechanism in Pakistan is now capable of handling.
Right, and then there is a National Action Plan,
Yes.
and then we saw today's NSC statement. With that, I'm told that we have to conclude the program. Barrister Mohammad Ali Saif Sahab, thank you very much for your precious time. Anwarul Kakar Sahab, always great having you in the show. Thank you very much for your precious time. Khalid Taimur Akram Sahab, thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program as well. Viewers, you have listened to our participants, of course. Efforts to solve the Afghan conundrum continues, and government of Pakistan is trying to play its role to the maximum. And then we heard, ambassadors Zamir Akram actually at the UN stating that Pakistan is ready to help people evacuate from Afghanistan as well, the people who want to leave, in addition to the IGO's members and also the diplomatic staff. One example he gave of Danish staff. But apart from that also, when you look at what is going on, the media coverage, it seems that all over the world a madness has descended on international media, and the way it is being reported is just to find somebody to blame. And at that time, cameras are used when people die. For example, there is some kind of scuffle at the Kabul airport. Even there, instead of actually helping people or helping staff, we prefer to cover what is going on and do nothing. It is important at this moment to first focus on solutions, because there are human beings which are stranded, and it is important to find solution. Blame game can continue later on, but at this moment, let us save as many lives as possible. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.